Ladies and gents, boys and girls, Tuesday, January the 9th, 2024. Hope you are all doing well. Chris Phillips here, your host of SEC Unfiltered Live, here on somewhat of a gloomy Tuesday, dare I say, guys. It is pouring rain. I think we got some tropical storm or something like that. Be safe, by the way, if you're on the coast. I talked to somebody this morning. It's pretty crazy out there right now, all across the Palmetto State and all across the Southeast as well. So make sure you take care of yourself. Stay inside. Probably a good day to hang out and watch the show and call in and conversate. But again, thank you all so much for being here, guys. I see you all in the chat. Kayshawn, Ethan K, Xavier, Bruce. Appreciate you all tuning in. Also, those on social media, on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Twitch. However, you're tuning in. Thank you all so much for your continued love and support, guys. We have got a jam-packed show for you, an exciting show today because as college football ends, it's never too early to look ahead. It's never too early, right? The 2024 season is just over 200 days away. On today's show, I'll lock in my way too early record predictions for the 2024 season for every single SEC team. Also, of course, guys, we're talking basketball, the action on the hardwood tonight. Which road team has the best opportunity at pulling a big upset? You go look at the lines, guys. Bama's an 11.5-point favorite. Kentucky's double digits. LSU's nearly double digits. Nearly every spread tonight in the SEC on the hardwood is a double-digit favorite favoring the home team. So which road team's got the best shot at pulling the upset? Also, guys, the national championship last night, Michigan and Washington. Michigan wins that ball game 34-13 in a game that was kind of a snoozer, be honest with you. I'll give my full thoughts on the national title. But the bigger question, guys, should there be an asterisk? I can't say that word. I cannot say the word asterisk. I cannot say it. Is Michigan a tarnished champion? That's what I'm trying to say. Is Michigan a tarnished champion? Should we look at them in a different light than we look at other national champions? Again, 34-13, the final. But the bigger question is, how do you view the national title? Do you recognize Michigan as one of the all-time greats? Where do they rank in regards to all-time greats? What is Jim Harbaugh's future? And again, for a guy, he was suspended half the season. I don't know that it gets talked about enough. So how do you view Michigan? How should we view them? Are they a tarnished champion, or is the sign-stealing stuff overblown? Also, guys, there's been coordinator movement in the SEC. Alabama defensive coordinator Kevin Steele has retired. Florida hiring a new – I want to pull up this title so I get it correct. Hiring a new executive head coach for defense in Auburn defensive coordinator Ron Roberts, who is now in Gainesville. So Billy Napier, the king of making up fake titles. Also, guys, we're going to kick off the show in a moment with our good friend Jake Crain of Crain & Company. Really exciting stuff. Again, guys, appreciate you all tuning in. If you have not done so yet, be sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Hit that bell icon as well, so you get notifications of when we go live, when we drop new video content. Also, of course, guys, the podcast, which drops daily, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. That is where you can find that SEC Unfiltered all across those platforms. Also, guys, check out SECUnfiltered.com. Again, we're boosting our team of contributors. We actually had an article go out this morning looking back on the first weekend on the hardwood and breaking down all of the games tonight, giving thoughts on Tennessee, Kentucky. Is there anybody that can catch them in the SEC race? Appreciate our guy for writing that article and contributing. Again, guys, we're planning on having 3 to 4 articles per day going out when we get the team fully constructed and fully built out, and really excited for that. Also want to shout out my friends over at Agogi Podcast. We actually dropped a video this morning. I went on their show last week. Really great stuff, guys. Just detailing and pulling back the curtain more so on the SEC Unfiltered initiative and some of the whys, the whats, the wins, the wheres, the 5 W's, if you will, behind SEC Unfiltered, and really exciting stuff, and appreciate those guys. We also talked ball, by the way, but appreciate those guys giving me the opportunity to share the story and share exciting plans for the future. And yeah, really appreciate that. Really appreciate you guys checking them out as well. And be sure you subscribe to them and give them some love, man. They're 3 former Gamecock football players, by the way. So for you Gamecocks out there, that'll be something that may drive you to listen. But they talk about life, sports, adversity, triumph, all kinds of different stuff. All kinds of different stuff that I think everyone can resonate with. So you guys go check that out. With that being said, guys, he joins us weekly, and there's no better time for him to join us this week than the day after the national championship game. Our good friend and one of the best in the business, Jake Crain of Crain and Company. He joined the show. Jake, what is going on, my friend? Appreciate you taking the time.
Chris, what is up? Congratulations on the early success of SEC Unfiltered. I'm excited for you, my friend. It's been fun to keep along with kind of how it's coming along and excited for you, as I said. But yeah, man, it's unfortunate the last college football game is done. I know we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of it, but this is why sports are great. We got the NFL playoffs. We know college football season really never ends, especially with the transfer portal. But then college hoops too, man. Look, I love me some college hoops, Chris. You know that.
I want to give a special shout out to Jake, your good friend and our good friend, David Cohn, who I know was thrilled last night. I am happy for David Cohn, no matter how you feel about Michigan. It's always great when one of your own can celebrate a championship. So congratulations to David.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Well, I always say, too, and Dave's very, from an analysis standpoint, he's going to tell you what he thinks. But we're all fans of somebody. I hate guys that are like, oh, well, you know, I'm not a fan of anybody. I'm just going to tell you. But I can tell you about everybody and still be a fan of somebody. To be honest with you, if you're not a fan of somebody, I think you should be federally investigated. But that's a story for another day. But, yeah, man, he was we did the live stream last night. It was incredible, man. We had over 100,000 views by the time we got off of there. I know, like I said, we're going to get into the game, but it was a lot of fun. And, yeah, he was very sprite this morning, even though we got done at about 11:30 last night.
Jake, before we get into the game, I want to ask you about a take that I actually had that, early on in this SEC Unfiltered journey. I'm doing my best, I guess, to just piss off Alabama people, and I think I probably succeeded because yesterday when talking about the game, and I don't know this was necessarily even planned, and I threw it up on social media and thought, there's probably some Georgia fans that'll resonate with this, but little did I know 400,000 views later that my take that, I thought the best team in the country didn't play last night, and that was Georgia. And I understand they lost to Bama, but I would have taken Georgia over Michigan, over Washington, over Texas, and in a rematch in Bama. Am I crazy for saying that? Do I have any sort of leg to stand on, or should I just shut up and accept that the Big Ten and the Pac-12 were the feature teams last night?
Well, look, I mean, my biggest gripe was Florida State being left out, not to bring that dead horse back to life and then beat it to death again. Is that if we're going to put the four best teams in there, Georgia's one of the four best teams. I mean, if we're going to go off what the sports book's going to be on a neutral site, Georgia would be favored over Washington. Hell, to be honest with you, I think Georgia may be favored over Michigan if we're going to be honest on a neutral site. But at the end of the day, Chris, the SEC championship, it was a playoff game. Georgia had a chance to beat Alabama, to cement themselves the way that Michigan cemented themselves, at beating Ohio State there at the end, and they weren't able to do it. On a neutral site, would I bet on Georgia? You're right. But the game is won and lost on the field. And it's not just, if you win, it's when you win. And apparently now it's who's hurt even if you win. So, yeah, I don't think that's a crazy take. But to me, I picked Michigan to win it and because of experience. The whole year when everybody was saying, oh, Michigan hasn't played anybody, we don't know about Michigan. We know more about Georgia than we know about Michigan. We've watched this same years consecutively. So they lost a playoff game where they were the favorite. They lost a playoff game where they were the underdog. So again, these guys have been through the battles, they've been through the wars, and experience is the unteachable, intangible, and it always will be. That's why you see old teams typically win in the NCAA basketball tournament. All these one-and-done teams don't typically win it. Why? Because experience, at the end of the day, when put together, is the best weapon you can have.
So, Jake, let's get in the nuts and bolts of this game. Michigan jumps out to that big early lead. It looks like it's going to be a repeat of last year with Georgia and TCU. And, credit Washington for staying in the fight. I thought, and I know you'd probably agree, they had some missed opportunities early. That fourth down comes to mind where, really maybe they could have taken control of that game and flipped the momentum. But, Michigan just kind of did what it had done, dare I say, lately, at least late in the season. I want to say all year, but certainly they had some big blowout wins, but especially in the playoff where they just kind of, they just treaded water just enough, stayed their head above water and found a way to win, and obviously dominated late and put that game away, used their physicality. I mean, obviously they were all over Michael Penix Jr., did everything he could, but he was under duress. It looked like Jalen Milroe, a repeat of that, honestly, where he's just under duress constantly. Your thoughts on how the game played out? I picked Michigan. I wasn't totally shocked. I thought it would be closer. Were you surprised how the game played out in any way? I know you had the Michigan Wolverines, but just how it unfolded, did it surprise you at all?
Mm-hmm. The part that surprised me most was that Washington's defense was able to answer the bell so much in the second and third quarter. I mean, I thought it was a 4-round fight. And again, this is where experience comes in. Neither one of these teams was going to panic, right? It just like Michigan didn't panic against Alabama at the end. Washington didn't panic when they got down 14-3. They made their adjustments, and I thought they won the second and the third quarter up front, which was the most surprising part of the game to me. Really, the two most shocking parts was one, that Washington's front seven was able to hang in that fight so long for Michigan, especially early when it could have collapsed. And number two, that Washington's strength, their offensive line, I know Michigan's really good on defense, but this is a Joe Moore award-winning offensive line, not because they just line up and run duo and power and counter and insert and ISO down your throat, but because they communicate well in pass protection, right? They do a good job passing things off. They don't make a lot of mistakes. They're a very versatile and complete offensive line. But they were shook. I mean, it was like the last round at the shelter with Eminem and Papa Doc. It was like they just went to Cranbrook and nobody knew about it until the end. That's the part that surprised me the most. But the game plans I thought were phenomenal on both sides, right? Michigan, just like we said all the week before on Crain and Company, is going to play soft coverage, umbrella coverage, make Washington go 9, 10, 11, 12 plays down the field and kick field goals in the red zone. And it would frustrate Washington over time. And it did. Washington is used to hitting big plays, and it's not just big plays down the field. That's the common misconception. What Washington was able to do was hit short to intermediate passes, hit the screen game, and hit big plays off of that, as well as the deep ball. Well, what did Michigan do yesterday? They tackled in space, and it seemed like the chunk plays, the few that Washington got, were 12 and 15 yards because Michigan was going to make them methodically drive the ball down the field. And that's what they did. And I think over time, the offensive line got frustrated. I think Michael Penix got frustrated. I think the receivers got frustrated. You saw drops. You saw pre-snap penalties. So to me, I was surprised that the two weakest units from each side were supposed to be their strength. Now, I know it caved in on Washington at the end after the pick. But, man, I thought you saw why Washington was there because of their fight back in that second and third quarter and keeping that game close. I was surprised it was as low scoring as it was, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Jake, to piggyback off that, your last point, I was surprised at it as well. And I was, I as much as we talk about Michigan and the off-field stuff, like you knew on the field, they were legit. They were, every bit the making of a national champion. I was really impressed with their speed and their speed in the secondary. And I mean, I don't know if I was the only one that felt this way, but I just felt like Michigan made Washington look slow. Like it was not like it was not what I expect. I thought Washington, and again, that's credit to Michigan probably. Like I thought Michigan looked slow. It's just no other way to put it.
They had Donovan Edwards made Washington's defense. I mean, they made him look like the Flash, like Flash Gordon, like those first two touchdowns. And Washington was good initially, and he bounced it. One time he cut back kind of against the grain, and then he just looked like the fastest human on the planet. But here's where for Michigan. In the past, when you run up against a Bama or a Georgia or an LSU, or even, let's go back further, Florida, when they were on their run, you may be able to hang up front physically. That may be your bag, right? You may be able to stay in the fight there. But on the outside, you're not good enough. Or it may be vice versa. Maybe you're good enough on the outside, but up front, it's Eddie Lacy versus Notre Dame. I'm eating you on national, television, right? I'm running you over and we're just big boying you. That wasn't the case. When Jalen Milroe either had time to throw the ball down the field, and you can use Bama as a litmus test. They got some of the best athletes in the country. They always do. When Jalen Milroe had time in the pocket to throw, or when he would scramble and evade and buy time and extend the play, Michigan was still able to stay step for step with the Alabama skill players while being able to hold up front and honestly kick Alabama's offensive line's ass the whole game. It's a complete team. How do you usurp a dominant SEC team? You do what they do. You have a complete team. That's the only way to survive, right? It's the only way, because just like in basketball, just like in baseball, sometimes position groups play better in certain games than they do in others. Sometimes sides of the ball play better in certain games than they do in others. And the teams that win championships, regardless of sport, are the teams that can win in the most ways. And it will always be that. How do you do that? You have the best players at the most positions that play the most discipline.
Jake, what is your response to people that say Michigan is a tarnished champion and there should be an asterisk next to their name in the record books?
I say, how long have you been an Ohio State fan? Like I laugh at this. I laugh at this. It's like the people are like, oh yeah, Auburn's 2010 natty doesn't count because they paid Cam Newton $180,000. You know what I say to that? What a steal! $180,000. We must have the greatest deal maker. Is Howie Mandel like just hanging out at Auburn? It's the greatest deal of all time. People that say, oh, Reggie Bush. Nobody wants to give Reggie Bush's Heisman back. This whole tarnished asterisk. You saw the game last night. I saw the game last night. I saw Jim Harbaugh and those Cartiers, hold up that crystal ball. Michigan's a national champion. You don't like it, beat them.
So, Jake, as the 4-team college football playoff era comes to an end, we now turn our attention to the 12-team playoff. I guess just your thoughts, your excitement level. Is there anything you think you'll miss about the 4-team playoff, favorite memories from that era? Because, again, last night did serve as the end of an era and now the turning of a page. And I, for one, am ecstatic. I can't wait to see how a 12-teamer unfolds.
Well, I'm an eternal optimist. So the way I'm looking at it is I'm hoping this past year, the one we just ended, which I think you guys can all agree in the chat and everywhere out there, that we had more parity this year as far as teams that could possibly win a national championship, probably 6 to 7. You could maybe say 8 than we've had in such a long time. I hope this is the new normal, right? Whether that be through some combination of the transfer portal and NIL and conference realignment, whatever. I hope this is the new norm because it'll make the playoff better, right? The more teams that can win, more competitive the playoff is. I think the atmosphere is going to be incredible. I'm interested to see if there's any changing of the rules. I know they met recently with obviously the Pac-12 going away. Will that affect any of the automatic qualifiers? I don't know. We'll see. We're kind of building this parachute on the way down. But no, I again, if we go back to just a 2-team and everybody else has no chance, then a 12-team playoff, there'll be some fun games on the periphery. But, we know what's going to happen at the end. This year, even though, Michigan hadn't won it since 97, you had some guys in there that kind of surprised you a little bit. You saw Texas, you saw Washington. But I tell you what, man, what I'm interested to see is, is a team like Memphis next year that could sneak in the playoff, a group of 5 team, whether it's at that 11 spot, whether it's at that 12 spot. What happens if we have somebody knock somebody out early? Like it just – the likelihood of it isn't great, but the lead up to it, more good football games, more competitive football games, and you don't have to be a mathematician to figure out that the more playoff games, the less opt-outs. I think it's going to be a little bit more exciting next year. And I tell you, the conference realignment to me, though, man, I'm looking at some of these schedules. Look, that game you saw last night, they're in the same conference now, and add Oregon and USC and UCLA. Utah's going to the Big 12. Texas and Oklahoma's in the SEC. We're just taking all the good non-conference games and putting everybody in the conference together. I'm fine with it. I'm excited.
Yeah, Jake, we've got our way too early predictions for 2024. Record predictions coming out for the SEC today. And I tell you, going through those schedules, like you mentioned, it's like there's a lot of teams that are going to be racking up losses that are not used to racking up losses because it's just inevitable. It's inevitable.
Well, what I said, and I think it's the best way to put it, if you're an SEC fan, which I'm guessing most of you are, and you look at your schedule, you always have those. You look at it, you're like, oh, damn. Now you just added another damn to the schedule with either Texas or Oklahoma. So it's not going to get easier. What I am excited though, Chris, about no divisions. I think no divisions is the way to go. That's the way everybody's going. I want the 2 best teams to play in the SEC championship game, and it's so limited when you limit the amount of teams that can qualify based on divisions that geographically, you don't have to be Christopher Columbus to figure out, Missouri in the East, like Auburn, Alabama in the West. I'm not Lewis and Clark or Sacagawea or anybody, but that don't sound right to me.
Not to spoil it early before we get into the segment, Jake, but since we have you on, what if I told you I've got the Auburn Tigers going 8-4 next year?
Take it instantly. On the
it's
road
a tough
Georgia
schedule, too. It's a tough schedule.
You're on the road at Georgia and Bama, so let's chalk up 2. Like you chalk up to. Let's just be honest, right? I hope I'm wrong, right? But as an Auburn fan, I'm dead inside already, so you can't hurt me. So I'll chalk up those two. Look, 8-4 would be good. Quarterback situation though, worried about it. Worried about it. To be honest, don't trust them. I just don't. Just some guys.
Why does Hugh Freeze trust Peyton Thorne? Why?
Well, listen, there's a lot of things that go on, right, with this NIL situation, like money that's not saying that Peyton Thorne is only playing because they paid him NIL money, but it's what the market has out there. There's a decent amount of the market. Auburn and Hugh Freeze talked about this. He didn't think he did a great job in the transfer portal at the quarterback position. Caden Salter, obviously, a guy that's going back to Liberty. I think he withdrew his name from the portal last time I saw, but they're running out of guys. I mean, little Tua looks like he's going to Miami. Will Howard just went to Ohio State. It's just, man, something about that cat I just don't trust, Chris. Hey, let me ask you this, though. I heard you say Kentucky and Tennessee, two best teams in the SEC, easy, hands down, right?
Yeah, I don't think that was me.
Oh, yeah.
And if it was, I'm going to retract that statement, by the way. Just that must have been per sources. Must have been per sources. Yeah. Let's stick with Auburn for a moment, Jake. This is fun. Philip Montgomery's out as OC. Hugh Freeze, it looks like, is going to take over the play calling.
Good.
Your thoughts on that?
Good. Everybody get out a piece of paper and a pencil. Write down what you're best at. We're going to do that. Dance with the one that brought you, baby. Yeah. Dial it up. Yeah. Good. I want Dr. Strange over there just looking at the field doing this the whole time.
Jake, like I mentioned, it's way too early season, right? We've seen all the way too early top 25s that came out and stuff like that. And like you said, one of your fears, obviously, what you hope happens, I should say, is that the parity continues, portal NIL continues to push that. And I think it will. But if it doesn't, let's say we have 2 or maybe 3 just like dominant teams, there's a clear gap. In your mind right now, who would those 2 or 3 teams be? Because maybe you can look at Georgia, but I don't really see that. I see the parity continuing. But if it doesn't, who are those teams that you think that we're going to be like, man, they're just better than everybody?
Bama and Georgia. Easy answer.
Do you think Bama's ready to get back to that level after what you saw this year?
Well, I just think, there's at least to this point, they're still going to have Nick Saban and they're still going to have some of the best players in the country. So you just gave up 49 sacks and made the college football playoff. You beat USF on the road with a lacrosse player quarterback. So at this point, I just think discounting Bama with a 12-team playoff. Are you kidding me? These cats barely missed it when it's 4. Like, they barely missed it when it was 2. They'll make a 12-teamer, but I'm interested to see Texas. I'm interested to see that growth. Year 1 in the SEC. Here's what I'm going to tell you, Texas and Oklahoma fans. And y'all know football. I'm not saying you don't. I lived in the state of Texas, in Fort Worth, baby, funky town. I know what's up. But this common misconception of, we're coming over to the SEC. It's all about just beating Alabama and Georgia. See, that's the trap. Y'all are falling for the trap. That's already hard. Duh, we know that. That's tough, right? But guess what? Now you got to go to Ole Miss and then Missouri and then Kentucky. Surprise. I don't know, Louisville, something like I'm just telling you, Notre Dame, right? Like, it's the grind of this conference. You can play really well and mess around and go 9-3, like real quick in this league. And you got to play Michigan. Doesn't Texas play Michigan next year?
At Michigan. I think it's week 3.
No. Arch Manning's like, yeah, I'll take another year, Quinn. Just come back. Come back for this one. I'm going to be stretching and doing push-ups.
Speaking of way too early top 25s, Jake, Ole Miss, it seems like they're in the top 5 of every one of those. Are you buying the hype on the Rebels to that degree where you think they're a top 5 team going into next season?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the talent level that they have with Lane Kiffin. I mean, losing Judkins hurts, but when you look at the way this roster's made up, I think they're going to be just fine. Especially with Jackson Dart's running ability. I mean, Bentley's a good player as well. When I look at Ole Miss, bringing in guys from the portal, what I'm more interested to see is how this kind of experiment plays out, bringing in the mercenaries, right? Bringing in all these guys to try and put them together and make a Frankenstein team. It worked for Florida State, to be honest with you, when you look at the way that roster was made up. Now, not to this level that Lane Kiffin's kind of relying on it. We saw Deion Sanders, work early and then kind of fall off the table. But that, that's a depth and personnel issue. But now when I look at Ole Miss, man, I think they got a chance to be a top 5 team. If you look at their schedule, there's not an easy schedule in the SEC, but there's lighter and heavier ones, and I think Ole Miss does have a lighter one.
Jake, when you look back on the season that was, most fun off-the-wall storyline or topic maybe you guys had on your show that you'll recall, and you've already used the decal or sticker on a helmet thing, so let's try something else.
Let's see. Probably the most controversial. I mean, that dude getting naked at Bass Pro Shops the other day was wild. I would say the New Mexico State quarterback urinating on his rival's logo inside the indoor facility on the road at practice.
I don't think I saw that.
Yeah, that happened. And then Jerry Kill in his press conference after the bowl game kind of hit on a little bit. There was a decent amount of crazy stuff. A lot of it's obviously Michigan focused. Florida State just getting ready to tell the ACC, no, sorry, just send me a letter, whatever. But man, I think, Blaine wasn't a big Michigan believer this year. He wasn't as big. I picked him. I think Cone was a little nervous to pick him because he didn't want to.
Who did Blaine have?
Blaine had, I think he had Georgia. I think he had Georgia winning it, which again, I mean, it's not
I had Ohio State, so I missed badly. So
well, I mean, look, again, you hang around in that 6 or 7, like you're going to run into a couple.
Right. Let's move to. There's been a lot of coordinator movement, Jake, in the SEC. Again, Auburn's replacing both their coordinators, OC and DC. Of course, we know Hugh Freeze is going to take over calling those plays. I would call that an upgrade. They'll have to replace their defensive coordinator as well, as Ron Roberts is headed to Florida. Okay, I want to get your take on this. And he's been hired as the quote-unquote executive head coach for defense, co-defensive coordinator, and linebackers coach. Have you ever heard of an executive head coach for defense? And thoughts on that addition for Billy Napier, and now the fact that Hugh Freeze obviously has got to go out and replace his DC. Any names you're hearing? I know you're close with the Auburn folks, Auburn people. Just thoughts on that as a whole, though. Ron Roberts to Gainesville.
Yeah, I don't know what worries me more, the amount of titles that Billy Napier gives these coaches, with this Billy Cotton, who I think is the dude from Split and here in the chat.
He's got 2 offensive line coaches. Yeah. He's got 2 offensive line coaches, no special teams coach, and an executive head coach for defense. So Billy Napier is either
you
a
see
genius or an idiot.
Wearing different numbers on special teams. How about that title for that coach? Well, look, titles equal money, right? That's the way this works. The titles you have entitle you to more money. It works like that a lot in the business world. That's one of the reasons, co-DC, associate head coach, that brings with it extra money. Belichick, I think, is the best at this. If you look at some of the names of his coaches, it's like what their titles are. It's really interesting. I mean, this is the same guy who turned his DC into his OC in the NFL level. Never seen that, but yeah, Billy Napier. I would tone down maybe the amount of titles and tone up the amount of discipline. And I mean, you talk about schedules though, going into next year. I mean, if you're Billy Napier in Florida, I mean, goodness, like getting hit with a baseball bat when you walk in the door, it's just tough.
Keeping it moving, Jake. Kevin Steele is set to retire. This reported by Chris Lowe of ESPN last night. 40 years in the coaching profession. That's impressive.
400.
But,
400.
Yeah, that's what it feels like, 400. But set to retire. Alabama looking for a DC. Do you think they stay within and promote Travaris Robinson? Do you think they go DJ Durkin potentially? That's a name I've heard as well. Your thoughts on that opening?
Obviously Nick Saban's going to make the right decision here. I think T-Rob, it's his time. I wouldn't be shocked if they promoted him from within. A guy that played at Auburn, but he's a hell of a coach. He's a hell of a recruiter. One of the up-and-coming guys to be head coaches here sooner rather than later down the road that everybody in the SEC, if you really pay attention, you've either really loved him in recruiting or you've really hated him. And he puts a really good product out on the field, and he's been in that system now for a little bit. So I would lean T-Rob. But look, DJ Durkin, another guy that's been on the circuit, that's been multiple places. When I look at the way this Alabama defense and what they have returning, obviously the turnover that they have every year, we all know it's Nick Saban's defense. They're running Rip Liz match coverage. That's what it is. Like, it's these other guys come in and they adopt his terminology. Nobody's coming in there and changing the way they go about things. There's evolutions and malleability within that, but typically it comes from the top. Similar to what you see with Kirby, but I think Kirby goes about it a little different way because Kirby was Nick Saban's DC. He knows what it's like to be in that role when you look at guys like Glenn Schumann and stuff like that. But yeah, I would guess T-Rob. But regardless, entering the Nick Saban school for guys who want to learn to coach at elite level and do other stuff good too. That's a nice house to reside in.
And Jake, last coordinator move I forgot to ask you about, man. LSU hires Blake Baker from Mizzou. They make him the highest paid assistant coach in college football. This man's getting paid, I think it was $2.5 million to be a DC. You better fix the defense if you're getting paid that. But I think we can all agree a great hire for the Bayou Bengals.
Well, the good part is it can't get much worse, right? You go in there and you guys are just okay. You're going to look like, Monty Kiffin, for the love of God. Listen, I think it's a great hire because he gets it. He understands it. He played at Tulane. He knows that state. He understands what LSU has to be mentally on defense, and it's intimidating. I still, even though LSU's had Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and all these guys, and Jaden Daniels winning the Heisman this year on offense, I still think of LSU is that team that's got a bunch of orcs from Mordor that get off the bus and run around and knock your teeth through the back of your throat while they're dancing, right? Big special teams plays, big hits, defensive linemen that are swatting guys like flies and running guys down, guys coming off the edge that are hell and that are intimidating, right? LSU is the brand that can be very intimidating, and it's gotten away from that. It's weird to see, to be honest with you. Like, I watch LSU be bad on defense, and it's like watching the Warriors not shoot good. It just doesn't feel right. Like, it doesn't make sense. So I know Blake understands that. They've got the athletes, right? They've got the guys. Just look at the guys they're going to put in the draft this year. And we know that LSU is a brand that recruits itself. They can get hotter than anybody. And look, Blake's a daggum good football coach, but I think deep down he gets it. He understands that monster that has to be unleashed defensively for LSU to be able to continually operate against Alabama and Georgia and these other teams.
Jake, anything you like on the college basketball card tonight? I know you're off to a hot start gambling, but we turn our attention now to college basketball. And I look at the SEC too. All of the home teams are favored. Most of them are favored by a lot. There's 2 double digits. The other 8.5, 7.5. Anything in the SEC you're looking at and across college basketball? Gift our live show audience here with some winners.
Well, I got outside of the SEC. I got Baylor at -2.5 at home against BYU tonight, which I love. It's up to -4.5 now. I would still take it, right? Baylor hadn't been playing great lately, but they're really good at home, and they need this win against a ranked BYU team. But in the SEC, South Carolina, love what's going on. Love Lamont. But I feel like Bama covers. I think it's 11.5 right now tonight.
11.5.
I think Bama covers the 11.5 tonight. It's going to be tough to go on the road and win any game in the SEC, let alone against Bama, who I don't think Bama's as elite as they've been, right? But they're still a damn good basketball team. Nate Oates is a damn good basketball coach. The Auburn game, I just get weird about A&M, man. I feel like that's going to turn into a rock fight. It seems like it always does with those guys. It seems like that's what Buzz wants it to be. I like Kentucky. I think were they -8.5 at home against Missouri, or was it 12.5?
They're -12.5.
Yeah, take Kentucky. I'm riding Kentucky into the midst of Avalon. We'll go there together. And then there was one more, LSU at home.
LSU Vandy, they're 8.5-point favorite.
Yeah, give me LSU at home. I like McMahon, right? I think eventually it's going to hit home. I don't think LSU's elite, but Vanderbilt, man, I'm so let down by Stackhouse this year, right? I felt like they were kind of turning a corner at points last year. I know Pippen's gone. Pippen Jr.'s gone, but man, they're just not good at basketball. It's unfortunate for them. Those are the ones I like tonight. There's a little 4-teamer. Maybe put it in the pot, parlay it, cook it up. See if you get something out that smells delicious.
They're not good at much of anything, Jake, and that brings me to this. By the way, before we get you out of here, this coming, I think, via some Brett McMurphy piece. Talking about Michigan, and there were anonymous people talking about, the realities of quote unquote cheating or gamesmanship or whatever. And one of the quotes was, out of nowhere, Vandy catches this straight, quote, "The only pure thing in college athletics is Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt sucks," end quote. So just brutal.
Outside of college baseball,
yeah.
Show me on the doll where you lied.
Yeah, exactly. Jake, last thing before I get you out of here, how disappointed were you that we did not get the NCAA football video game commercial? And who should be the cover athlete, in your opinion?
I need names. I need names of people that spread this apparent falsehood. All right, now I've heard that EA Sports did not spread it, so I'm not going to hold them fully accountable, but I'm still a little bit pissed off, if we're going to be honest. Maybe it's catching strays speaking about it, but EA Sports will catch one. But whoever made up this rumor and it didn't happen. I just hope you know what you did. I feel like you should be banned from buying the game. I feel like that's a proper punishment. That'll stop this. There's a few things you don't tempt me with. All right. One of them is NCAA football. That's one of them. And I haven't had that in a while. I'm like Tyrone Biggums in Chappelle's show, right? Just walking around, just scratching my neck. And you promised me a trailer, and I got to watch the GTA trailer that came to fruition. I don't know, Chris. I'm still pissed off about it, to be honest with you.
Cannot wait.
Oh, and who's going to be on the cover? Jaden Daniels. Sure.
Jaden Daniels. Okay. Jaden. I like that pick. I thought somebody, though, I thought they had a great answer. Mike Leach. Just a tribute to Mike Leach. That
would be dope. I like that.
Cool.
Maybe Jim Harbaugh. Maybe Jim Harbaugh with a burger. Connor Stallions with a burger.
Oh, my God. Hey, listen, if you're a real entrepreneur, man, you make custom covers and you let everybody pay a premium for whoever you want on the cover. You could get Hugh Freeze on the cover of your NCAA football. Why not?
Wait, hold on. Say that again slower.
Yeah. Indeed. Jake Crain of Crain & Company. Jake, it's always a pleasure, my friend. We'll do it again next week.
All right, man. Y'all be good. I'll holler at y'all next week.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you. Jake Crain, an absolute legend. Appreciate him taking the time. Really good stuff. Guys, we're going to jump into a quick break on the other side. The college football season just ended, but it's never too early to look ahead. I'm going to lock in some 2024 way too early record predictions for each and every single SEC team. All that and more, guys, on the other side of this break. You're tuned in to SEC Unfiltered Live.
Yo, you think Dallas' Power 4 gonna drop 30 tomorrow?
Boy, you tripping.
Did you see his mom made a post about going to the game?
What? Hold up. His mama gonna be there?
He's been averaging like 34 points a game when she's there.
At least 40 when she be on that Jumbotron.
He don't like to let his mama down.
Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Cash in on your sports fandom with Prize Picks.
SEC Unfiltered Live is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Go download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com. And when you do, use the promo code SECU to receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks is the simplest fantasy game on the market, focused around prop total entries. You pick 2 to 6 players, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry. Prize Picks has no sharks, optimizers, or mass multi-entry. It's literally just you against the projection. They also allow mixed sport entries. So, for example, you can take the over on LeBron, parlay with the under on Mahomes. They've got college sports, pro sports, literally anything and everything you can think of. They have got it over at Prize Picks. They also have a slick, easy-to-use mobile app, both on the App Store and Google Play, and they're rated 4.8 stars in the App Store with rave reviews. So many fans and listeners of SEC Unfiltered have made tons of money with our friends at Prize Picks, and you should as well. So again, go download the Prize Picks app or head over to prizepicks.com, and when you do, use that promo code SECU to receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. We're also brought to you by our friends over at MyBookie. When your money's on the line, choose a trusted sports book that gives you tools to win, like MyBookie. At MyBookie, it doesn't matter if your team is up or down. You can easily cash out or bet the game live to come out on the winning side. Use MyBookie for daily odds boosts, same-game parlays, and take advantage of huge prize pool contests. Every single sack, fumble, and touchdown is another chance to hit payday. To get started, go to mybookie.ag, and on your first deposit, use promo code SECU to grab a deposit match up to $1,000. Try the MyBookie money bag as well to grab a potential Super Bowl frontrunner at long shot odds, plus 38,000 on the Eagles and Chiefs. You won't find odds like that anywhere else. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie. Finally, SEC Unfiltered Live is brought to you by our friends over at Rowback. Guys, if you haven't heard of Rowback before, it's time to check them out. It's safe to say I'd bet on these guys any day of the week because I absolutely love their gear. I couldn't be more pumped to work with Roback. It's simply some of the most comfortable gear that I own. From the performance polos to the hoodies and the joggers, it's some of the best fit and best feel around. Roback's performance hoodies are some of the best pieces of clothing I've ever worn. I can't emphasize how soft these things are with great stretch and breathability. They're simply some of the best hoodies out there. Odds are, guys, if you see me during football season, baseball season, basketball season, or just here on SEC Unfiltered Live, you'll more than likely see me in a Roback hoodie. Secondly, guys, Roback's performance polos, they're some of the most comfortable polos out there. They're moisture wicking with 4-way stretch, making them perfect for a game day, and they have the perfect fit. With crisp collars that don't lose their shape, I could not recommend these polos more. In all honesty, guys, Roback's been gaining traction big time. I'm sure you've seen them. They've been working with some of college football's biggest stars, such as Alabama's quarterback Jalen Milroe and former LSU head coach Ed Orgeron. So go check them out now and use the promo code SECU on Roback.com for a generous 20% off your first order. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. 20% off all bottoms, Q-zips, hoodies, and more with the promo code SECU. Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back here on this Tuesday, January the 9th, 2024. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, guys. Continue to flood us with your questions, your comments, and your voicemails at 843-790-3377. At the end of this show, we'll take your questions, your comments, everything in between. Guys, I want to hear from you, and I want you guys to be a part of the show. Guys, the college football season has officially ended. With that being said, the countdown to 2024 officially begins, and I hold in my hand the 2024 SEC football schedule. And as I mentioned, it is never too early to look ahead. That's what we're doing here, guys. I'm locking in way too early predictions, way too early record predictions for the entire SEC for the 2024 season. Now, guys, let me give a quick disclaimer before we go through these. I cannot stress enough that these are subject to change, right? This is barely any research done. Rosters are going to change. Coaching staffs are going to change. Things are going to change between now and the summer, right before SEC Media Days, when I will lock in my predictions, my official predictions for the season. These are way too early predictions. As it states, way too early and subject to change. Wanted to get that out of there. But again, guys, the beauties and the banter, cannot wait for it. Here we go. We're going to go alphabetically throughout the SEC. Again, my way too early record predictions for each and every single SEC team. And we start with the Alabama Crimson Tide. Guys, I doubted the GOAT last year. I had Bama at 9-3. I bought into the, Nick Saban's on the tail end of his coaching career. Bama lost their best two players. How are they going to survive it? Look at the schedule. Georgia's taken over college football. I had the Crimson Tide at 9-3. You look at their schedule in 2024. I think at Wisconsin in week 3 is tricky. They obviously get Georgia at home. They've got South Carolina. They got to go to Tennessee in a tricky game. They got Missouri at home. That'll be intriguing, right? LSU in Baton Rouge is always tough. Oklahoma in Norman. And then close out the season, of course, with Hugh Freeze and the Auburn Tigers. I've got Alabama at 11-1. Guys, again, I doubted Nick Saban and company last year. And I know we're all sitting here thinking, man, Bama was so terrible on the offensive line. Jalen Milroe, is he a championship quarterback? Is he not? Guys, right now, until Nick Saban is no longer in Tuscaloosa, I learned my lesson. I've got Alabama at 11-1 for the 2024 season. I think those tough road games, right, at Tennessee, at LSU, at Oklahoma, I think Alabama's going to drop one somewhere, but I don't think they're going to drop more than that. 11-1 for the Crimson Tide. Let's move to Arkansas. Tough non-conference game in week 2, right? I got Oklahoma State, they've got Oklahoma State, excuse me. Auburn in Auburn's a tough game. They've got Tennessee at home in Fayetteville, right? With no divisions now. We got some really, really interesting games on the slates. Texas and Fayetteville is going to be a tough game late in the season. Obviously, close out with Mizzou and Como. They still have that game against Texas A&M in Arlington. I've got Arkansas at 6-6. I've got Arkansas at 6-6. I think the Hogs find a way to get back to bowl eligibility under Sam Pittman. Now, is that enough to keep Sam Pittman in Fayetteville? I think a lot of it is going to depend on what it looks like, right? How it plays out. You cannot have those ugly home losses that you had in 2023. But right now, I think Arkansas, I think they do take a step forward. They've got tons of questions, right? Who the heck's going to play quarterback for starters? They've got tons of questions, new coordinators. I think, though, the Hogs will get back to a bowl game. Is it going to be enough to keep Sam Pittman in Fayetteville? I'm not sure that it is. They've got a really tough stretch in the middle with Auburn, A&M, Tennessee, then a bye week, but then LSU. Again, the LSU game is at home. You got to go to Auburn, but you got Tennessee at home. How do you fare in that Texas A&M game? I think that's going to go a long way in his Pittman retained, right? Because if you're not beating a year one Elko, there's going to be a lot of questions about, okay, what are we doing here with Sam Pittman? I do think Arkansas, though, will go 6-6, go to a bowl game. Is that enough to keep Sam Pittman in Fayetteville? We shall see. We move to the Auburn Tigers, guys. I've got Auburn at 8-4. I think Auburn under Hugh Freeze. I trust Hugh Freeze. I think you saw some positive signs. Yes, 4th and 31. Yes, Auburn fans, I understand. Yes, 4th and 31 was abysmal. It was inexcusable. It was ugly. It was embarrassing. I think the Auburn Tigers will learn from that, and despite the fact that I don't trust Peyton Thorne, despite the fact that I don't trust him offensively. I mean, guys, Auburn went 6-6 and had one of the worst offenses in college football. Hugh Freeze has taken over the play calling. They're not going to have one of the worst offenses again. They've got a really interesting non-conference game against Cal in week 2. That's at home. Open up SEC play against Arkansas. They've got Oklahoma at home. They got to go to Georgia and to Bama, which is always brutal, right? You can basically just chalk up those two as L's. They've got Mizzou in Como in the middle of October, which is a really interesting game. Kentucky and Lexington, that one's probably a must-win to get to 8 wins. They play Vanderbilt again. Non-conference schedule is fairly favorable, guys. You got Alabama A&M, Cal, New Mexico, and UL Monroe. I think Auburn takes a step forward in year 2 of Hugh Freeze. I've got Auburn at 8-4. To Gainesville we go. The Florida Gators. This one's going to hurt, guys. And I tell you this, going through this schedule, you look at some of these schedules, right? You add Texas and Oklahoma, no more divisions, schedules get shaken up. I mean, guys, there are just some absolute gauntlets in the SEC next season, but none like what Florida is going to face, right? You open up with Miami. Samford's the only game, and I was looking at this, right? Samford's the only game you look at on the schedule, guys, and say it's a win. Chalk it up. It's a W. The rest of the non-conference schedule, guys, you got Miami in Gainesville, Central Florida in Gainesville, and Florida State in Tallahassee. You play 11 Power 5 teams. You open up SEC play with Texas A&M at home, then you go to Mississippi State and Starkville. Guys, if you can take care of Miami in week 1, you got a real opportunity to start the season strong, right? Even if you don't beat A&M, what are you looking at? 3-1 at worst if you beat Miami. That game against A&M, I think, guys, is a massive game for Billy Napier because, again, you got a first-year head coach in Mike Elko. It'll be early on in the season. It's year 3 of Billy Napier. That's a game you have to win, I think, right? Then you get the bye week. Then you got UCF, Tennessee and Knoxville, right? Vol's going to look for their revenge. Kentucky and Gainesville, Gators will look for their revenge. Of course, the game, world's largest outdoor cocktail party against Georgia. You got to go to Texas. Then you got LSU and Ole Miss at home to close out the year. I hate to do it, guys, but it is just so hard to find wins on this Florida schedule. I got the Gators 4-8. I don't think Billy Napier makes it through year 3, guys. Even a good team, even a really good team, would struggle to get to 6 or 7 wins with that schedule. I just don't see it happening for Florida, guys. I know Graham Mertz is back, but it's a murderer's row. I think the Gators, they take the beating, and I think Billy Napier will be fired at some point. I don't even know if he makes it to the end of year 3. I really don't. I've got Florida going 4-8. The Georgia Bulldogs, they open up with a fun one, non-conference game, neutral site game against the Clemson Tigers in Atlanta. Open up SEC play against Kentucky in week 3. Got to go to Alabama and to Texas. Nobody is going to be talking about this Georgia schedule and how, quote-unquote, easy it is this year. Of course, world's largest outdoor cocktail party. You got Auburn and Athens. Mississippi State comes in now. Ole Miss and Oxford. That's a tricky game for Georgia. Tennessee is in Athens. Georgia Tech and Athens. Who cares about that one? Overrated rivalry. I think Georgia's going to take care of Clemson, by the way. I don't think Clemson is ready to go up with the big dogs, literally and figuratively. I've got Georgia at 10-2. I think Georgia drops a pair of games. Again, those road trips, guys, at Alabama, at Texas, at Ole Miss, and then you got the rest of the slate to deal with. So 10-2 for Georgia. And again, guys, you go 10-2 in the new SEC, you're a really, really good team. I think Georgia goes 10-2. I think they're still, again, going to be one of the best teams in the country. They're a 12-team college football playoff team, but I do think they take some licks on the road. I got the Dogs winning 10 games. Kentucky, they open up SEC play. Really interesting game. South Carolina, week 2 in Lexington. Got to go host Georgia in week 3. Got Ole Miss on the road. Florida in Gainesville on the road. They host Auburn. Got to go to Tennessee. They got to go to Texas. They got Louisville at home. Tough schedule. I think Kentucky goes 7-5. I think they're kind of similar to what they were this past year. Brock Vandagriff takes over at quarterback. You've still got the fantastic wide receivers in Barryon Brown, Dane Key, and then Jamar Dumas Johnson, the addition at linebacker. So I got Kentucky at 7-5. I think it's just they're going to be kind of one of those middle of the pack teams yet again. I don't see Kentucky making a major step forward, if you will, and I think the schedule gets even tougher. I think 7-5 will be a solid year for the Cats, and that's where I have them at. Let's move to LSU, guys, the Bayou Bengals. Really interesting non-conference opener against Southern Cal in Vegas, and they've got UCLA in Baton Rouge September the 21st. They host Ole Miss. Got to go to Fayetteville. Got to go to College Station. They host Ole Miss, like I mentioned, host Alabama. Got to go to Florida, and then host Oklahoma at home. A lot of their tougher games are at home, right? I like that for LSU. I got the Bayou Bengals at 9-3. How quickly can Blake Baker flip that defense and get them playing and looking like an LSU defense again? Garrett Nussmeier, guys, it's as much as I like Nussmeier for everything he did in the bowl game, it's impossible. Literally, it is statistically impossible for there not to be some sort of statistical step back or some sort of drop off from what Jaden Daniels did to Garrett Nussmeier. Even if Garrett Nussmeier is one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC, is he going to be Jaden Daniels good? I don't think so. That's why I've got LSU at 9-3. The schedule is difficult. Again, a lot of the tougher games are at home, but some of those challenges still loom. 9-3 for LSU next season. Let's move to Ole Miss, guys. Hotty toddy, gosh almighty. This schedule sets up really well, and there's not a team, I think, in the SEC catching more hype than Ole Miss. We've seen the way too early top 25s, the Rebels, ranked in a lot of preseason top 5s, if you will. And the schedule sets up really well, guys. I mean, this schedule, you couldn't ask for a better schedule if you're Lane Kiffin to capitalize off the 2023 momentum, the offseason momentum. I mean, it really works out in your favor. You got Furman, Middle Tennessee, Wake Forest, Georgia Southern. Those are your first 4 games. And then Kentucky in Oxford. That's the first month of the season. There's not a game there Ole Miss should not win. They start off October, or really go through October. Tricky road games at South Carolina, at LSU, October the 12th, of course, will be a tough one. They got Oklahoma at home, got Georgia at home, got to go to Florida, and then Mississippi State at home. Guys, this schedule is as favorable as you could ask for. Ole Miss, I think, has the team to capitalize. I got the Ole Miss Rebels at 11-1. I'm buying in on Ole Miss. I'm buying in on Lane Kiffin, what they've done in the portal. Yes, I know they lost Quinshon Judkins. I think they'll be just fine. I think they'll be able to plug and play and put somebody else at that running back position. Lane Kiffin, I think, will figure out a way. 11-1 for the Ole Miss Rebels in 2024. Guys, we move to Mississippi State. The Jeff Lebby era begins in Starkville. They open up with Eastern Kentucky. Arizona State, week 2. Interesting. Non-conference game. Open SEC play with Florida in Starkville. They got to go to Texas. They got to go to Georgia. They got to go to Tennessee. They got to go to Ole Miss. This state schedule's brutal, man. I got Mississippi State at 5-7. I think it's going to be a tough start to the Jeff Lebby experience. Listen, I think Jeff Lebby's a good hire for them. I think he's going to make Mississippi State fun on offense again, but it's going to take some time to get his guys in there. It's going to take some time to instill his systems, his scheme, if you will. 5-7 for Mississippi State. And I think, too, Mississippi State, they might be better than that record shows, but it's a gauntlet of a schedule. 5-7 for the Bulldogs. We move to Missouri. Taylor's oldest time for Mizzou when it comes to their schedule. Guys, the first month looks like this. Murray State, Buffalo, Boston College, and Vandy. Every year. Give Missouri credit. They're the kings of scheduling favorably, right? Then they have a bye week. They kick off SEC play. They kick off SEC play with Vandy. Excuse me for discrediting Vandy there. Kick off the month of October, though, in Texas A&M, in College Station against Texas A&M. That's a tricky game. They got Auburn coming to Como. Got to go to Bama. Got Oklahoma at home. Got to go to Mississippi State. And then, of course, that game against Arkansas. Got to go to South Carolina as well. Can they extend that winning streak, make it 6 straight games? I've got Missouri at 9-3. I think this is going to be a fun conversation, guys. All offseason or all preseason, if you will. Who's more likely to take a step back, Ole Miss or Missouri? I think that's going to be the debate, right? Because I don't think both are going 11-1. I don't think even both are going 10-2 again. I think it is going to be Mizzou that's going to take a slight step back. I'm talking a game, right? But you lose Cody Schrader, guys. That's a big loss for that team. That's a huge loss. There's going to be more pressure on Brady Cook. He does get Luther Burton and Theo Weiss Jr. back. Again, I think they're going to get off to a hot start. The schedule is difficult, though. 9-3 is where I feel comfortable with Mizzou right now. Let's go to Oklahoma. Year 1 in the SEC under Brent Venables. They open up non-conference play, Temple, Houston, Tulane. Then their first SEC game is Tennessee. The Volunteers come to Norman. First SEC road trip is at Auburn to close out the month of September. Got to play Texas, of course, in the rivalry game. Get South Carolina and Norman. Got to go to Ole Miss, to Mizzou. They get Bama at home, and they got to go to LSU, guys. Again, this was one of the tougher SEC slates, one of the tougher schedules as well. Guys, I think Oklahoma, I'm nervous. I'm nervous for Oklahoma. I'm nervous for Brent Venables. I think they had a great year 2 of his tenure, set them up well for SEC play. But listen, somebody has got to lose some games. Somebody has got to take the licks, if you will. And I think of Texas and OU, I think it's more than likely OU. I think Jackson Arnold is a highly talented player, but you've seen the portal impact Oklahoma, their deficiencies on the offensive line now, what they're dealing with. What's Jackson Arnold going to be? A lot of questions. I've got Oklahoma at 6-6. I think Oklahoma, I think it's going to be a tough year 1. And for somebody it is, guys. That's what I'm saying. Like, you look at these schedules. They're brutal. Like, somebody's got to lose some games. Bottom line. I think that'll be Oklahoma. I think the Sooners will have a tough year 1 in SEC play. 6-6 is where I've got OU. Let's move to South Carolina. The Gamecocks looking to bounce back from a 5-7 season, a pivotal year 4 of the Shane Beamer era. They open up the season with ODU. That'll be an easy win at Kentucky in Lexington to kick off SEC play. Gamecocks have won back-to-back against Kentucky, but early in the season, right? South Carolina, they got Kentucky week 2, LSU week 3. This is a South Carolina program that has struggled early under Shane Beamer. I don't know that you can afford to get out of the gate slow again and get to a bowl game. Again, guys, they're non-conference games. Old Dominion, Akron, and Wofford. Those should be 3 kick-in wins, right? You've got the season finale against the rival against Clemson. Then you got Vandy. So there's basically 4 kick-in wins for South Carolina. Can they go 2-6 in the other 8 games and reach bowl eligibility? Obviously, there's no more Spencer Rattler. Xavier Legette is gone. Juice Wells is gone. The Lenore Sellers era begins. Shane Beamer and company done a pretty good job flipping some rooms in the portal, whether it be running back, it be linebacker. Clayton White, it looks like, will return as defensive coordinator for South Carolina. Again, you got to host LSU. You host Ole Miss in a really interesting game. Of course, Juice Wells makes his return to Columbia. You got to go to Bama and to Oklahoma in back-to-back weeks. South Carolina's October is Ole Miss, Bama, Oklahoma. It could be a winless October for the Gamecocks. You host A&M late. You host Missouri late. You got to go to Clemson. Huge year 4 for Shane Beamer. Huge year 4. I think if South Carolina 4-8 or worse, I think he's fired. 5-7, and I think it's 50-50. I think there will be chatter about his resignation or his chatter about his firing. 6-6 or better, and he's safe. You got a brand new quarterback. Folks in Columbia are really high on Lenora Sellers. I've got South Carolina at 6-6. I think they find a way to go 2-6 in their other 8 games. I think they're going to win those 4 games I mentioned, the 3 non-conference and the kicking against Vandy. I think South Carolina, right, they're going to win an SEC game outside of Vanderbilt. I think Williams-Brice Stadium, really tough place to play. Again, you got LSU at home. You got Ole Miss at home. You've got Mizzou at home. You got Texas A&M at home. Do the Gamecocks find a way to just win 1 or 2 of those games? And then you got the game at Clemson, and who knows what Clemson's going to be. I think South Carolina finds a way to keep their head above water, if you will, get to 6-6, even with a first-year quarterback in the Norris Cellar. So, bowl-bound for South Carolina. I think they'll improve on that 5-7 from last year. We go to Knoxville, guys, Rocky Top. I got to be honest, guys. I'm drinking the Nico Kool-Aid. I'm buying in on Nico. I'm buying in on Josh Heupel in Tennessee. I'm buying in on the defense continuing to improve. We know Brew McCoy is back. Squirrel White, of course, is going to be back. We saw what Nico did in the bowl game. I know it's Iowa, but guys, why are we discrediting the fact that Iowa's got one of the best defenses in college football, and Nico and company just diced them up, right? You got NC State in Charlotte in a really intriguing week 2 non-conference game. You open up SEC play in Norman against the Oklahoma Sooners. That's a tough one, right? You get Florida at home. You get Bama at home. You get Kentucky at home. You got to go to Georgia, right? Schedule sets up pretty well. Like I said, guys, I'm buying in on Tennessee with Nico. I've got Tennessee at 10-2. I've got the Volunteers at 10-2 right now. I think Nico is going to flourish under Josh Heupel. I think they'll have one of the best offenses in the SEC yet again. I think the schedule is actually somewhat favorable when you look at some other slates, what they could have gotten. And I like what they're doing defensively, man. I think Tennessee continues to beef up that front 7 on the defensive side. I think Tennessee will go 10-2, reach double-digit wins, and effectively be a 12-team college football playoff team. Let's move to Texas. Guys, they've got a hell of a schedule. Opening up, you got Michigan week 2 in Ann Arbor, right? And guys, they don't open SEC play until the end of September, week 5. They open up with Mississippi State in Austin. Of course, they've got that game against Oklahoma. They get Georgia at home. They got to go to Vandy. They get Florida at home. They got to go to Fayetteville against Arkansas late season. That could be a tricky game, right? Last time they went there, they lost. They got beat down, actually. They get Kentucky at home. And then, of course, they go to College Station to close out the season. Guys, I love Texas's schedule. I think Michigan is going to be a brand new look team. I'll be surprised if Jim Harbaugh is there. I don't think J.J. McCarthy's coming back. Again, that's going to be a new look Wolverines team. It's not going to be the team we just saw with the national title. I think things set up well for Texas, guys. I've got Texas 11-1. I think they're going to be right back at the top of college football. I think they're going to be right back in the playoff. I like the Longhorns. Hook them 11-1 in 2024. We go to College Station, Texas A&M, as the Mike Elko era begins. They open up with Notre Dame in College Station. That's a fun non-conference game to open things up, kick things off. They begin SEC play week 3 in Gainesville against Florida, which is going to be a really fun, intriguing game, guys. I mentioned earlier in the show, or early in the segment, talking about Billy Napier, why that's important for him. That puts a lot of emphasis on the game. Also, guys, A&M has been plucking Florida players out of the portal. And they got Emmitt Smith's son, the running back from Stanford. So that one's going to be a lot of fun to watch. They get that game against Arkansas in Arlington. They host Mizzou. They host LSU. Got to go to South Carolina. Got to go to Mississippi State. Got to go to Auburn and then host Texas. I got Texas A&M 7-5 in year 1 of the Mike Elko era, guys. I think Mike Elko was a really, really good hire. I think A&M still has a lot of talent. Connor Wegman is back, guys. I mean, I think A&M could be better than that 7-5 record. Like, they've still got talent. For everything they lost in the portal, guys, you watch them against Oklahoma State, and they were outmanned for sure. They did not have their guys. But, I mean, I saw in the trenches, they've still got dudes. Like, the way they've recruited, they are 2 or 3 deep at a lot of positions. So I think that's going to prevent Texas A&M from falling off the cliff or missing a bowl game, rather, in year 1 of Mike Elko. 7-5 for the Aggies. And finally, guys, The Vanderbilt Commodores in Nashville. They open up with Virginia Tech in Nashville to kick off the season. Fun non-conference game. Their season opens up again. Vatech, Alcorn State, Georgia State the first 3 weeks. Open up SEC play with Mizzou in Como. They host Bama. You got to go to Kentucky. Host Texas. So they host Texas and Bama. So a fun home slate. Got to go to Auburn, host South Carolina, go to LSU, and then host Tennessee, guys. I think it's going to be another rough year for Clark Lee. I got 3-9 for the Vanderbilt Commodores. I think it's another rough year in Nashville. And what is the future of Clark Lee? We shall see. So again, guys, those are my way too early record predictions for each and every single team in the SEC. When it comes to predictions, when it comes to records, what say you? Guys, let's jump into a quick break. On the other side, we'll keep the conversation rolling. I'll give my thoughts on last night's national championship. Is Michigan a fraudulent championship? Is Michigan a tarnished champion? All that and more on the other side of this break, guys. You're tuned into SEC Unfiltered live.
Yo, you think Dallas' Power 4 gonna drop 30 tomorrow?
Boy, you tripping.
Did you see his mom made a post about going to the game?
What? Hold up. His mama gonna be there?
He's been averaging like 34 points a game when she's there.
At least 40 when she be on that Jumbotron.
He don't like to let his mama down.
Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Cash in on your sports fandom with Prize Picks.
SEC Unfiltered Live is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Go download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com. And when you do, use the promo code SECU to receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks is the simplest fantasy game on the market, focused around prop total entries. You pick 2 to 6 players, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry. Prize Picks has no sharks, optimizers, or mass multi-entry. It's literally just you against the projection. They also allow mixed sport entries. So, for example, you can take the over on LeBron, parlay with the under on Mahomes. They've got college sports, pro sports, literally anything and everything you can think of. They have got it over at Prize Picks. They also have a slick, easy-to-use mobile app, both in the App Store and Google Play, and they're rated 4.8 stars in the App Store with rave reviews. So many fans and listeners of SEC Unfiltered have made tons of money with our friends at Prize Picks, and you should as well. So again, go download the Prize Picks app or head over to prizepicks.com, and when you do, use that promo code SECU to receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. We're also brought to you by our friends over at MyBookie. When your money's on the line, choose a trusted sports book that gives you tools to win, like MyBookie. At MyBookie, it doesn't matter if your team is up or down. You can easily cash out or bet the game live to come out on the winning side. Use MyBookie for daily odds boosts, same-game parlays, and take advantage of huge prize pool contests. Every single sack, fumble, and touchdown is another chance to hit payday. To get started, go to mybookie.ag, and on your first deposit, use promo code SECU to grab a deposit match up to $1,000. Try the MyBookie money bag as well to grab a potential Super Bowl front runner at long shot odds, plus 38,000 on the Eagles and Chiefs. You won't find odds like that anywhere else. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie. Finally, SEC Unfiltered Live is brought to you by our friends over at Roback. Guys, if you haven't heard of Roback before, it's time to check them out. It's safe to say I'd bet on these guys any day of the week because I absolutely love their gear. I couldn't be more pumped to work with Roback. It's simply some of the most comfortable gear that I own. From the performance polos to the hoodies and the joggers, it's some of the best fit and best feel around. Roback's performance hoodies are some of the best pieces of clothing I've ever worn. I can't emphasize how soft these things are with great stretch and breathability. They're simply some of the best hoodies out there. Odds are, guys, if you see me during football season, baseball season, basketball season, or just here on SEC Unfiltered Live, you'll more than likely see me in a Rhoback hoodie. Secondly, guys, Rhoback's performance polos, they're some of the most comfortable polos out there. They're moisture wicking with four-way stretch, making them perfect for a game day, and they have the perfect fit. With crisp collars that don't lose their shape, I could not recommend these polos more. In all honesty, guys, Rhoback's been gaining traction big time. I'm sure you've seen them. They've been working with some of college football's biggest stars, such as Alabama's quarterback Jalen Milroe and former LSU head coach Ed Orgeron. So go check them out now and use the promo code SECU on Rhoback.com for a generous 20% off your first order. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. 20% off all bottoms, Q-zips, hoodies, and more with the promo code SECU. Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back here on this Tuesday, January the 9th, 2024. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, guys. Be sure, by the way, you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Hit that bell icon as well so you get notifications of when we go live and when we drop new video content, guys. We drop video content every single day. You want to make sure you're staying up to date with that. Also, guys, the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast, we're at SEC Unfiltered there. Again, daily pods, content bleeding out of the eyeballs, whether it be podcast, it be live show, it be social media, it be merchandise, which is coming soon, by the way, guys. I will be building out the store. We're also adding content contributors, guys. SECUnfiltered.com is where you can check out all of our written work. So be sure you head over to SECUnfiltered.com. Stay up to date with that. A lot of exciting things happening there. And again, guys, I can't say thank you enough, man. I tell you this. I'm having so much fun. I'm having more fun than I've ever had before. I'm having more fun than I've ever had before creating content, being an entrepreneur, interacting with you all. And again, it's all because of you all, your love and your support. And again, I cannot say thank you enough. Also, guys, this has been released, so let me go ahead and plug this shamelessly really quickly. Had a great conversation with SEC Mike of that SEC podcast. Truly grateful for Mike giving me the opportunity to come on his show and talk about the SEC Unfiltered entity. And also, of course, guys, we spent a large portion of the show talking ball. So go check that out, guys. Michael Bratton, you probably know who he is. SEC Mike, that SEC podcast. Cannot recommend them enough. And we had a great conversation that, again, literally dropped this morning. So go check that out. In the meantime, guys, we keep the conversation rolling. Is Michigan a tarnished champion? Wolverines win last night, 34-13. In a game that, guys, listen, I know many of you are going to label me as sour grapes when talking about this, right? Many folks, especially if you are a Michigan fan and you are stumbling upon this video, believe it or not, guys, they exist. If you're a Michigan fan stumbling upon this video, let me go ahead and get this out of the way. I don't have any personal disdain. I don't have any personal vendetta. I don't have anything really against Michigan. And guys, I'll go ahead and put it out there, by the way, because we're going to talk about, is Michigan a tarnished champion? Should there be an asterisk next to Michigan's name in the record books? No, I don't think there should. But is it a conversation worth having? Absolutely, yes, it is. And first things first, guys, on the game itself. Again, the reason I said it's going to come off sounding like sour grapes is because yesterday I had the take that I think Georgia was the best team in college football this past season. And dare I say that the game last night proved that, because that game was boring, man. That game, Michigan jumps out early, right? It's 17-3. They kind of just go through the motions, put it in cruise control. Give credit to Washington for staying in the fight, for fighting back. But guys, if you're honest with yourself today, that national championship game was a snoozer, okay? That national title game was a snoozer. It was fun early, and it maybe got fun late. But really from the second quarter all the way until like 7 minutes left in the game, I mean, dude, I found myself almost falling asleep through it. I'm not even going to lie to you. So congratulations to Michigan. It was a dominating performance. But the game itself, I thought it would be a classic. I thought it would be a fun back-and-forth game. We unfortunately did not get that. So, Michigan's your national champion. Undefeated, undisputed. Listen, they earned it on the field. They beat everybody they beat. They beat the SEC champion. My only question, though, is this. And I'm someone, again, guys, I come from the school of baseball. I was a college baseball player. So sign stealing, I mean, it's as part of the game as sunflower seeds or throwing a dip in or whatever, having a hot dog at a ball game, having a beer, whatever. It happens, right? If I'm on second base and your catcher's not smart enough to change his signals, change his signs, and we get your signs and we pick up on them, that's on you. If your third base coach, if he's not smart enough to change up his signs every now and then, and we can pick him up, that's on you. So I totally get that, right? What I don't get is why we don't talk about the sign stealing stuff more from the standpoint of like the role it played in Michigan's success. Then you've got J.J. McCarthy, guys, as I talked late last week, literally going on record saying that, yeah, we knew Ohio State was doing it. And like we had to pick up our game and we had to do certain things to compete. Here's the difference. You're not wrong. Everyone in college football is cheating to some degree, right? I'm a South Carolina guy at heart. People ask me about, well, there's, rumors that 2022 South Carolina may have gotten signs and cheated. Did they do it? I don't know. Like, they may have very well done it. I hate how much sense it makes. But you know what? As the article that came out from Brett McMurphy said this morning, everybody's doing it, and if you're a clean program, you're Vanderbilt. You're not winning. That's all due respect to our friends in Nashville, by the way. But you're either doing everything you can. Maybe you're blurring the line, whether it's in the portal, it's in NIL, it's in sign stealing, it's something else. You can either do it or you can lose. You have one of two options. So I'm not saying that everybody isn't doing it. Here's the biggest difference, though. Michigan got caught. They got caught. They got caught in this extensive cheating thing and in this sign stealing thing with Connor Stallions and what he was doing and going to games and filming teams. And like, it was crazy. It was beyond anything we've ever seen. I just don't know. And then, guys, the part of it that is really fascinating to me. Jim Harbaugh was suspended half the year. He literally missed half of the games. There's no question something went down, okay? No question. No question. And Michigan got no punishment, like none. I just wonder if that same situation took place with a non-blue blood, if that would have happened with Washington, if that would have happened with, I don't know, if it's a 12-team playoff and it happens to Missouri, right? Like, is the NCAA turning the other cheek and just kind of looking away and letting that team proceed forward as normal? Did the brand of Michigan protect them from the standpoint of not suffering ultimate consequence? Again, I don't think there should be an asterisk next to their name, right? Is Michigan a tarnished champion? I guess it depends on how seriously you take cheating, how seriously you take sign stealing, right? I know everybody's doing it, guys. And don't be holier than thou and say, well, my program's not doing it for sure. Like, I don't care who you're a fan of. Everybody's doing something to try to get ahead, or because if you're not, you're falling behind. If you're not, you're falling behind. But it's a fair debate. I don't necessarily think, because I think if we put an asterisk, if we have this debate, this argument, we've got to put an asterisk next to Michigan's name. There are other champions that you could go back and do the same. Back when Auburn paid Cam Newton, Reggie Bush getting his Heisman taken away. Like, there's been shady stuff happening forever and ever. But this is just the latest. And I think it's a debate. I think it's a debate and it's a conversation worth having. Right? So, How do you view Michigan? How do you view them as a national champion? On the field, guys, that team was complete. Give them all the credit in the world. That team was complete. I was extremely impressed last night with Michigan's speed. I thought they made Washington look slow. And the biggest fear that I think Washington folks had, or those pulling for Washington, came true in the fact they just simply couldn't protect it. And it looked like the lights, dare I say, were too bright for the Huskies at times. Drop passes, procedural stuff that was incorrect, right? False starts. That right tackle last night, that poor right tackle for Washington, he didn't have a chance, especially in that second half. So Michigan on the field. Michigan was a championship, a national championship caliber team. How much do you weigh all the other stuff that happened with Michigan football off the field when you think about them as a national champion? Guys, we're going to jump into a quick break. On the other side, we'll touch on some SEC basketball, guys. Got a fun slate of games tonight. A lot of home favorites. Which road dog has the best opportunity to go out and pull the upset? We'll talk about all that, guys, and much more on the other side of this break. You're tuned in to SEC Unfiltered Live.
Yo, you think Dallas' Power 4 gonna drop 30 tomorrow?
Boy, you tripping.
Did you see his mom made a post about going to the game?
What? Hold up. His mama gonna be there?
He's been averaging like 34 points a game when she's there.
At least 40 when she be on that Jumbotron.
He don't like to let his mama down.
Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Cash in on your sports fandom with Prize Picks.
SEC Unfiltered Live is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Go download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com. And when you do, use the promo code SECU to receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks is the simplest fantasy game on the market, focused around prop total entries. You pick 2 to 6 players, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry. Prize Picks has no sharks, optimizers, or mass multi-entry. It's literally just you against the projection. They also allow mixed sport entry. So, for example, you can take the over on LeBron, parlay with the under on Mahomes. They've got college sports, pro sports, literally anything and everything you can think of. They have got it over at Prize Picks. They also have a slick, easy-to-use mobile app, both on the App Store and Google Play, and they're rated 4.8 stars in the App Store with rave reviews. So many fans and listeners of SEC Unfiltered have made tons of money with our friends at Prize Picks, and you should as well. So again, go download the Prize Picks app or head over to prizepicks.com, and when you do, use that promo code SECU to receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. We're also brought to you by our friends over at MyBookie. When your money's on the line, choose a trusted sports book that gives you tools to win, like MyBookie. At MyBookie, it doesn't matter if your team is up or down. You can easily cash out or bet the game live to come out on the winning side. Use MyBookie for daily odds boosts, same-game parlays, and take advantage of huge prize pool contests. Every single sack, fumble, and touchdown is another chance to hit payday. To get started, go to mybookie.ag, and on your first deposit, use promo code SECU to grab a deposit match up to $1,000. Try the MyBookie money bag as well to grab a potential Super Bowl frontrunner at long shot odds, plus 38,000 on the Eagles and Chiefs. You won't find odds like that anywhere else. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie. Finally, SEC Unfiltered Live is brought to you by our friends over at Roback. Guys, if you haven't heard of Roback before, it's time to check them out. It's safe to say I'd bet on these guys any day of the week because I absolutely love their gear. I couldn't be more pumped to work with Roback. It's simply some of the most comfortable gear that I own. From the performance polos to the hoodies and the joggers, it's some of the best fit and best feel around. Roback's performance hoodies are some of the best pieces of clothing I've ever worn. I can't emphasize how soft these things are with great stretch and breathability. They're simply some of the best hoodies out there. Odds are, guys, if you see me during football season, baseball season, basketball season, or just here on SEC Unfiltered Live, you'll more than likely see me in a Roback hoodie. Secondly, guys, Roback's performance polos, they're some of the most comfortable polos out there. They're moisture wicking with 4-way stretch, making them perfect for a game day, and they have the perfect fit. With crisp collars that don't lose their shape, I could not recommend these polos more. In all honesty, guys, Roback's been gaining traction big time. I'm sure you've seen them. They've been working with some of college football's biggest stars, such as Alabama's quarterback Jalen Milroe and former LSU head coach Ed Orgeron. So go check them out now and use the promo code SECU on Roback.com for a generous 20% off your first order. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. 20% off all bottoms, Q-zips, hoodies, and more with the promo code SECU. Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back here on this Tuesday, January the 9th, 2024. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Continue to leave us your questions, your comments, and your voicemails at 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377. With that being said, guys, we keep the conversation rolling. A big night of college basketball, specifically in the SEC. Which road team has the best opportunity to pull an upset tonight? Because, guys, you look at these games. We got 4 games tonight. Alabama takes on South Carolina, right? And the first team I'm mentioning is the home team, right? So Alabama hosts South Carolina. Kentucky hosts Mizzou. LSU hosts Vandy. And Auburn hosts the Texas A&M Aggies. All 4 of those home teams are favored. And they're not favored by a small margin. Bama is an 11.5-point favorite over South Carolina. Kentucky is a 12.5-point favorite over Mizzou. LSU is an 8.5-point favorite over Vandy. And Auburn is a 7.5-point favorite over Texas A&M. It's an odd night with how deep the SEC is. It feels like it's somewhat odd to see a night with that many big spreads, right? I just don't see all of the home teams covering in these games. There's going to be somebody that emerges and pulls a big upset. Who is most likely? You know, you first look at this game, Alabama and South Carolina. South Carolina been one of the best stories in the SEC to this point, what Lamont Paris is doing in year 2. Alabama, a team that had to survive, right? They had to survive in their first SEC game of the weekend. Went to Vandy and only won that game, I believe, by 2 points. And Nate Oates talked about the struggles late, right? The struggles down the stretch. If we got to play better, we can't allow, a near collapse to happen yet again. Is it asking too much of South Carolina? Meechie Johnson, BJ Mack, Miles Studi, that entire crew. Is it asking too much of them to go into Tuscaloosa and pull off the upset? Or does South Carolina make a very loud statement, which I think they would? If South Carolina wins this game, guys, I think we got to start talking about the Gamecocks as one of the top 5 teams in the SEC, right? They were 5th in our latest power rankings. We've got to seriously start having that conversation of, is South Carolina, a top tier SEC program this year? Are the Gamecocks a real contender in the SEC? So Bama at 11.5. We're going to go through these really quickly, previewing the games, and I'll give you guys my take, biggest road upset, where it could happen. Kentucky minus 12.5 against Mizzou. Missouri looking to bounce back from that loss to Georgia. Kentucky, really close loss on the road against Florida. I thought was a great win, gritty win. I don't expect Kentucky to have much problem with Mizzou, right? So I don't know if it's that one. Vanderbilt's terrible. They got to go to LSU. LSU with that big win at Texas A&M. Can you count on LSU, though, to be that team? Which team shows up? Which version of the LSU Tigers shows up? And then, of course, Texas A&M and Auburn is the one that's really tricky. Guys, I think South Carolina falls to Alabama tonight. I don't know. They may cover. I would not be surprised. 11.5 feels like a lot for the way South Carolina has been playing. but it is SEC play. It's tough to go on the road and win and hang, especially with a really good team like an Alabama. So I think Bama wins. I don't know that they cover. I'd probably take South Carolina on the plus 11.5, but I do think Alabama will get the win. I think Kentucky is going to destroy Missouri. I think at home, I think things will be clicking for the Cats. I think the 12.5 is not enough. I think they will blow out Mizzou. LSU Vandy's kind of interesting because you kind of feel like at some point Jerry Stackhouse's team is going to have a night where it all clicks. And, they've still got SEC caliber talent. They're so bad. They've been so terrible, but they almost beat Alabama, right? So obviously they've got some talented players on that team. And then again, LSU, what version of them shows up? I will not be surprised if Vandy covers this. I'll probably side with LSU in this game, but I will not be surprised if Vandy covers. And then finally, Auburn A&M, because I think A&M as the road dog, you look at these games, I think this is probably the best opportunity for an upset to happen, right? I think this is probably your best opportunity. Texas A&M, Buzz Williams, a team, right? They got off to a rough start in SEC play. You got to think, right, that at some point they're going to cut it on. You got to think at some point, right? You lose to LSU on your home floor. Everybody is counting out Texas A&M. Auburn, obviously, with that really impressive win at Arkansas. It's two programs in two very, very different positions. But I would probably say that game in Auburn is the best chance for a road upset. I'm still going to pick Auburn in the game. I don't know if they cover. I think A&M could win it straight up. But I tell you this, too. Auburn's got one of the most intimidating atmospheres in college basketball. One of the most intimidating atmospheres. So it will not surprise me, though, if Texas A&M can combat that. But I will be picking Auburn in this game. So I'm picking all the home favorites. I like the home favorites tonight. But I think Texas A&M could be that team. If we got a big upset in the SEC, I think it could come at the hand of Buzz Williams and the Aggies. Guys, let's jump into a quick break. On the other side, we're taking your questions, your comments, and your voicemails here on this Tuesday, guys. All that and more on the other side of this break. You're tuned in to SEC Unfiltered Live.
Yo, you think Dallas' Power 4 gonna drop 30 tomorrow?
Boy, you tripping.
Did you see his mom made a post about going to the game?
What? Hold up. His mama gonna be there?
He's been averaging like 34 points a game when she's there.
At least 40 when she be on that Jumbotron.
He don't like to let his mama down.
Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Cash in on your sports fandom with Prize Picks.
SEC Unfiltered Live is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Go download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com. And when you do, use the promo code SECU to receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks is the simplest fantasy game on the market, focused around prop total entries. You pick 2 to 6 players, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry. Prize Picks has no sharks, optimizers, or mass multi-entry. It's literally just you against the projection. They also allow mixed sport entry. So, for example, you can take the over on LeBron, parlay with the under on Mahomes. They've got college sports, pro sports, literally anything and everything you can think of. They have got it over at Prize Picks. They also have a slick, easy-to-use mobile app, both on the App Store and Google Play, and they're rated 4.8 stars in the App Store with rave reviews. So many fans and listeners of SEC Unfiltered have made tons of money with our friends at Prize Picks, and you should as well. So again, go download the Prize Picks app or head over to prizepicks.com, and when you do, use that promo code SECU to receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. We're also brought to you by our friends over at MyBookie. When your money's on the line, choose a trusted sports book that gives you tools to win, like MyBookie. At MyBookie, it doesn't matter if your team is up or down. You can easily cash out or bet the game live to come out on the winning side. Use MyBookie for daily odds boosts, same-game parlays, and take advantage of huge prize pool contests. Every single sack, fumble, and touchdown is another chance to hit payday. To get started, go to mybookie.ag, and on your first deposit, use promo code SECU to grab a deposit match up to $1,000. Try the MyBookie money bag as well to grab a potential Super Bowl frontrunner at long shot odds, plus 38,000 on the Eagles and Chiefs. You won't find odds like that anywhere else. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie. Finally, SEC Unfiltered Live is brought to you by our friends over at Roback. Guys, if you haven't heard of Roback before, it's time to check them out. It's safe to say I'd bet on these guys any day of the week because I absolutely love their gear. I couldn't be more pumped to work with Roback. It's simply some of the most comfortable gear that I own. From the performance polos to the hoodies and the joggers, it's some of the best fit and best feel around. Roback's performance hoodies are some of the best pieces of clothing I've ever worn. I can't emphasize how soft these things are with great stretch and breathability. They're simply some of the best hoodies out there. Odds are, guys, if you see me during football season, baseball season, basketball season, or just here on SEC Unfiltered Live, you'll more than likely see me in a Roback hoodie. Secondly, guys, Roback's performance polos, they're some of the most comfortable polos out there. They're moisture wicking with 4-way stretch, making them perfect for a game day, and they have the perfect fit. With crisp collars that don't lose their shape, I could not recommend these polos more. In all honesty, guys, Roback's been gaining traction big time. I'm sure you've seen them. They've been working with some of college football's biggest stars, such as Alabama's quarterback Jalen Milroe and former LSU head coach Ed Orgeron. So go check them out now and use the promo code SECU on Roback.com for a generous 20% off your first order. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. 20% off all bottoms, Q-zips, hoodies, and more with the promo code SECU. Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back. Final 23 minutes or so here on SEC Unfiltered Live, taking your questions, your comments, and your voicemails, guys. We'll run straight through 2 o'clock. No breaks here as we got lots of questions to get into, guys. And we kick things off with a voicemail. Our good friend Luke called in, want to talk about the national championship game. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get things rolling.
How you doing, Chris? This is Luke. Just wanted to give my take on the national championship game last night. I thought it showed a lot, back to your point that you said the other day, you're talking about how Georgia's, the best team in the country, and they aren't, they didn't get to play in the national championship, and I 100% agree with that. But I also think that it shows the strength of Alabama. Talking about the game last night, they were neck and neck with Michigan the whole game, and really should have had the game until the last 3 or 4 minutes. I just feel like Alabama should finish in the top, I don't know, somewhere in between 3 and 5 in the latest AP poll, but obviously that's probably not going to happen just because, people are hating Alabama now, but just wanted to know what your thoughts is on that. Thank you.
Yeah, Luke, I appreciate the call, my friend. No, to his point, I think Bama was a really strong team this year. And I think that, talking about Georgia, I don't want to disrespect Bama too much. We're going to have a lot of great conversation with Chris Marlowe tomorrow. I think he told me that we're not on speaking terms until that segment Wednesday because of my take. But, to your point, I think Bama was one of the best teams in football. But I think Bama – I do think Bama played maybe above what they were at a lot of times. And it speaks to, that's why everybody said this was Nick Saban's best coaching job. That's why people said that. Because that Alabama team, and it's weird to say because we're not used to saying it, but that Bama team had holes, man. That Bama team had a lot of holes, and we're not used to seeing an Alabama team have holes like that. We're just not used to it. So, guys, the final AP top 5. Michigan, of course, number 1, Washington 2, Texas 3, Georgia 4. So Bama finished 5th. I mean, I think that's respectable. I think that's respect. I think that's where they should have finished. Oregon and Florida State finished tied for 6th. Missouri finished 8th, Ole Miss 9th, and you got Ohio State, Arizona, LSU, Penn State, Notre Dame, Oklahoma State, Tennessee, Kansas State, Louisville, Clemson, North Carolina State, SMU, Kansas, and Iowa round out, Iowa and then Liberty. I thought Iowa was 25. Iowa and Liberty round out your top 25. So, no, to your point, man, I think Bama certainly was a top 5 team. I think Bama was one of the best teams in college football. I mean, that's why they were there, right? Yeah, so to your point, I mean, I said what I said about Georgia, and I stick by it. But Bama still was a great team, and I doubted the GOAT this year, and I was proven wrong. I mean, I think Nick Saban and company proved us wrong in that SEC championship game. They proved us wrong. So let's see. Clayton Foreman says, let's be honest, fellas. Florida is winning the 2024-2025 National Championship, and it's not even close. Clayton, that would probably rank up there with one of the biggest upsets or biggest shockers of all time. But hey, you never know. Crazy things happen in college football, man. Clayton also says, does the row stand for Rhodesian? I don't think so. I don't know. Maybe. That might. You know what? I never thought of that, Clayton, because of Rhodesian Ridgeback. I never thought of that. Wow. I learned something from you, Clayton. That you may be right. You may be right. Mark Powell says, what's up, big homie? Congrats on your blessings for your hard work and dedication. You're very natural at what you do and often rattle off words so swift and smooth. It's very similar to an auctioneer. Mark, I appreciate it. Yeah, I try to slow down, though. I don't necessarily want to be an auctioneer, but I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Anyways, guys, taking your questions, comments, your texts as well at 843 790-3377. Texter says, what's up, Chris? It's Robbie Davis. Prediction for the South Carolina game tonight is South Carolina 76, Bama 68. Let Paris cook, your friend Zaxby's Hall of Famer, Robbie Davis. So, shocker, Robbie Davis is picking the Gamecocks to win. Billy Cotton says, need to turn Williams-Brice Stadium into a graveyard and build a new stadium. Alonzo Kincaid says Bama will go 9-3 and Nick Saban will retire. I mean, it's going to happen one of these years. It's going to happen one of these years. And when it does, it's going to be surprising. Del Rice says, hotty toddy. What's up, Del? Appreciate you tuning in. Mayhem says, I am foaming out the mouth for NCAA. Same here, man. Dude, I was really disappointed. I was really, really disappointed that we didn't get the commercial. So, was really disappointed. Justin, how funny is it going to be when next year the SEC will have the most in the playoffs? I mean, I think they very well could, man. I mean, looking at, so let's do a fun exercise, because I didn't lock in like an SEC champion or anything like that, but I just gave record predictions, right? But looking at my record projections, there would be one for sure. Because I think if you're a double-digit win SEC team, you're getting in the playoff. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 double-digit win SEC teams. So that'd be 5 playoff teams from the SEC. 5. And then you've got Missouri and LSU at 9-3. Could the SEC get 6 teams? I think it absolutely could happen. I mean, guys, right now I've got Bama, Georgia, Tennessee, Texas, and Ole Miss all winning double-digit games, all in the college football playoff, the 12-team college football playoff. And I think Missouri and LSU will be right on the edge, knocking on the door. So, Yeah, I think the SEC could certainly make up half of the 12-team playoff field. I mean, guys, it's got the makings of a Big Ten SEC invitational. That's really what it could be. Because if you do 5 teams from the SEC, then you got Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, Washington. That's 9, guys. Is there going to be an ACC team in there? Does Clemson get in? Does Florida State get in? Does whoever else in the ACC? I don't know. Miami, do they get in? And then maybe does Big 12 have representation? Does the new Big 12? So, but certainly I think it's going to be a favorable format for the SEC and getting the best teams in. But I mean, the best teams come from the SEC more often than not, guys. Like, there's SEC bias because the SEC has been the best for so long. That's why the bias exists. Bottom line. That's why the bias exists. So until the SEC starts not beating everyone, and this year wasn't a great look, guys. It was a down year. SEC lost to the ACC on multiple occasions, right? But I think we're going to see that change. I think there's a reason to have that SEC bias. That's just my opinion. So, anyways, guys, 843-790-3377. Thank you all so much, guys, for tuning in. Austin Gregory says the G5 should have their own playoffs, honestly. Austin, I could not agree more. It is just, Austin, we are fooling ourselves thinking that teams like Memphis and Liberty and Appalachian State and Coastal Carolina and Troy and Tulane, we're kidding ourselves if we think a group of 5 team is ever going to win a national championship. We're kidding ourselves. We are kidding ourselves if we realistically think a group of 5 team or group of 5 teams can even make a national championship, even in a 12-team playoff. The fact that the G5 does not have their own college football playoff. Why is there not a G5 playoff? The answer is very simple. It's money related. It's a very simple answer. And I get that and understand that. But we're kidding ourselves. We're kidding ourselves making these projections going into next year like, oh, yeah, man, Memphis, they could really make a run. Come on. You don't even believe that. You don't believe you didn't believe Liberty could beat Oregon. You don't believe that Tulane could make a run. You don't believe. Come on, man. And it's just, it makes no sense that these teams are playing for the same trophy. Why is App State playing for the same trophy as Alabama? Why is Tulane playing for the same trophy as Texas? Why is Memphis playing for the same trophy as Miami? Why? It makes no sense, man. So, Austin, I think a great point. As you can tell, I'm passionate about this. And you know what's a shame too, man? So growing up, one of my favorite places to go, and still to this day is Beach Mountain, North Carolina. Love it. Beach Mountain, Sugar Mountain. Love the area. We'll go skiing. I grew up going there with my grandfather, my family. We'd play golf. We'd go hiking. Again, we'd ski. Like, great time, great memories. And Beach Mountain is only, 30 minutes away, 45 maybe tops, away from Boone, North Carolina. So I've always had this soft spot for Appalachian State. My grandfather loved to watch them, and we'd sit down and we'd watch App State. I remember watching App State when they won back-to-back-to-back national championships with Armani Edwards at quarterback and those great teams, right? Upset Michigan in the Big House. I will never forget watching those games. We'll never forget it. Never forget watching them rattle off 3 straight national titles. And what a sad day for Mountaineer Nation it was when App State went from G5 to P5. Not because they weren't going to increase revenue and be able to upgrade facilities and make money for the school, but because App State will never do that again. App State will never win a national title ever again. And that's a shame. You know, I mean, that's Georgia Southern, right? A powerhouse at the FCS level. We used to call it D1 AA football, right? A powerhouse at that level. They'll never be the same again. Georgia Southern, their season will never amount to anything more than winning the Bad Boy Mowers Bowl or whatever it is. Like it'll never amount to much more than that. and that's just a shame. A good team in the G5 like a Georgia State. It just, why? Like, who are we kidding? Who are we kidding? Why do we believe? I mean, I think that's the most no-brainer thing for the future of college football. Separating Power 5 and G5. Like, why do they play together? It just, and then, you know, FCS playing these bye games, FCS playing these games. I mean, you know, talking with Dan Scott, the voice of Furman, by the way, last summer, previewing that game when they played South Carolina. You know, I feel for schools, or like, I think it's a great thing when like a Furman can play a South Carolina, they can get $1 million check. What that $1 million check does for a school like Furman is, you know, really impressive. And it's a great thing for them. It's a great thing for them, right? But is there another way where that game could be a spring game? It could be a preseason scrimmage. It could be an exhibition where maybe you still cut that check, but it doesn't count. Like it's not a part of the season, because what is the point? What is the point? So anyways, I'm going off on a long rant, long tangent, but I've just, Austin, to your point, I've never understood why we kid ourselves into thinking that the Power 5 and the G5 should play together, and the G5 would ever have a shot at winning a national title. I don't see why we think that. Anyways, guys, like I mentioned, be sure to check out our conversation we had with Michael Bratton of That SEC Podcast. Really appreciate Michael Bratton having me on the show. Had a blast, man. Really, truly. And I mentioned this on Mike's show, and I want to say this to you guys too. And, you know, some will probably see that conversation, you know, think nothing of it or just be excited for it. Like, and I don't say think nothing of it in a negative way. What I mean by that is, like, that's a really big deal. And the reason it is because, guys, maybe some of you don't know. Maybe some of you don't realize. But there is a lot of ego in the space that is content creation, especially when it comes to sports, right? There's a lot of ego in that space. There's a lot of ego in the sports media space, I should say. And so, for example, I remember in the beginning when I started my entity, the Spurs Up Show, when I started that way back when, or I'll see a new one be created right now, right? Doesn't matter the team, doesn't matter the conference, whatever. And you'll see somebody say, oh, another show, we don't need any more. And these are people that have their own quote-unquote shows or quote-unquote entities or whatever. And so there's a lot of ego of people shunning other people or trying to discredit new people or you know, there's some folks that feel like everybody's in competition. I can't have anybody listen to anybody else except me, because if they listen to you, they won't listen to me. And so that happens. That happens frequently. That happens a lot, right? Especially early on when you're starting something new, especially when you're small, whatever it might be. So for Mike to have me on his show for Michael Bratton to have me on his show speaks to the type of character he has, speaks to the type of content creator he is. He and both Cousin Shane, and speaks to, excuse me, guys, speaks to the type of person he is, really, truly. Because, when I rebranded and restarted and did this thing and launched SEC Unfiltered, Mike had the option, right? Mike had one of two options. He could have taken the stance of, you know what? Screw this guy. He should stick with what he's got. He's coming in on my territory. How dare he? Another SEC show. He could have looked at it from that negative light. Instead, Mike is in tune with who he is and what he is as a creator, as a person. He knows that his light doesn't shine brighter because he tries to dim the light of others. He knows that's not the way to operate. He knows that we can all win in this space. Those that listen to him will also make me a part of his rotation or a part of their rotation, and I feel the same way. Listen to all of them. Everybody provides a different perspective. Everybody provides a different take on things, different spin, if you will. Maybe sometimes in some instances, a different subject matter. They just talk about different things. But Mike knows that his work is good enough to stand on its own merit without trying to dim the light of someone else. No, I'm not going to have you on my show, right? Because I've got a relationship with Mike. We've done work together. I'm not going to have you on my show like you're doing this. We're competitors. He doesn't think that way. And I don't think that way either. And so you'll hear it if you go listen to the show. But for Mike to have me on the show, to have me on his airwaves and promote my entity and promote our brand, and to have the humility to do so it's just something in this space I don't take for granted, guys, because there's a lot of people who are not like that. And it's unfortunate for them that they think that, I'm competing directly against this person versus as a creator, you're competing against yourself. You're competing against yourself day in, day out, right? Because a consumer will listen to you. They'll listen to that. They'll listen to this. A consumer is not necessarily like, devoted. I can only listen to this show. They're loyal to great content. They're loyal to value. That's it. And the more, the merrier. The more, the merrier when it comes to content. The more, the merrier when it comes to great work. That's why, guys, that, when I was in the Gamecock space, and now I saw it firsthand. I mean, you would see people make petty remarks or we've got too many podcasts. We've got too many this. Again, the only reason you would make those kind of remarks to anyone, it doesn't matter what fan base you're in, what sector, the only reason, I mean, this goes beyond sports. This goes to life. You know this, guys. The only reason someone belittles someone else who is simply just chasing a dream or a passion is to make themselves feel better about the lack of what they're doing in their life. That's the only reason you would do that. It costs $0.00 to be uplifting, to be positive, or to say nothing. Some people struggle with that. There's a lot of folks that struggle with that. But so again, it really just, speaking back to Mike and having me on his show, and I mean, again, you'll hear me talk about it in the beginning. I did not take that for granted. And, that was one of those things, guys, admittedly, with SEC Unfiltered being launched, I was curious. I was curious what the reaction was going to be from somebody like a Michael Bratton and Cousin Shane, like Chris Marler at, Saturday Down South or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, because it's a massive change. It's a monumental change. But I'm happy to say that the people that I've surrounded myself with and that I'm closest with have embraced it. And you guys have embraced it, and I can't say thank you enough, man. And it's been a blast thus far. And man, I'm enjoying the heck out of it, truly. I'm enjoying the heck out of it, every single second of it, man. So again, thank you all so much for the continued love of sport, guys. Like I mentioned, check out that show with Michael Bratton, that SEC podcast. Also, our good friends over at a Gogi podcast. We did a show with them. Highly encourage you check that out, guys. We've shared that on social media. Be sure you go check that out. Also, guys, hey, follow the personal X account, by the way. I'm at CPhilly19. Give me a follow on that. I'm trying to build up my personal account. But yeah, guys, outside of that, be sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube, hit that bell icon so you get notifications of when we go live and we drop new video content as well. Content is bleeding out of the eyeballs, guys. As we continue to boost our content contributors, we're going to have more content over at secunfiltered.com. So I highly encourage you to check that out. Podcast drops daily on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast at SEC Unfiltered. And I'm trying to think, guys, outside of that, again, check out Agogi, check out that SEC podcast, check out those two. We've shared those across our multiple platforms. And like I mentioned, man, just stay tuned. The joys in the journey, enjoying every single step of the way. Guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.